thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
All right, we are live, back from the Breeders' Cup, wearing the same exact hat. How you doing, John?
Breeders, this was not planned. Breeders' Cup issue. What can I say?
Yeah, they look good. They look good.
Yeah, they do. They do.
All right, so let's get right into it. We've got a lot to cover, a lot of news coming out of the horse racing world over the last couple of weeks. Post Breeders' Cup, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the tote system issues that we saw across a variety of tracks over the last week. We'll dive into the 60 Minutes feature, if you will, from a few weekends ago. I know you want to share a very early Derby horse. We'll go through the Clark Stakes coming up here at Churchill Downs on Saturday, and then we'll open up the floor to all of our live guests for a little bit of a Q&A. So tote system, let's start there. John, I know you've got a handful of things you want to talk about there.
Well, first off, thanks everybody who's here. I don't know if we're going to have a big turnout for our first live show. I've seen some of these where people just talking to each other, and that may very well be the case. I can't tell. I don't know if you can, whether we have any people on or not. But I'm sure it'll grow, and the replay will be up for those who want to watch it. Tote system. Years ago, when Val Pony won the Breeders' Cup Classic, there was a significant flaw in the tote system that was exposed, okay? Had Val Pony not won the Classic, and the people within the tote system who were betting those pick sixes and winning and wound up hitting that pick six, structured their tickets differently, even with Val Pony winning, they might not have ever been detected, okay? Karen Johnson wrote a phenomenal story. Her dad trained P.G. Johnson, the winner of that race, Val Pony. And I think their ticket, if memory serves correct, was structured. I think it was single, and there were bombs in there, and then all in the last two races. Because they put their ticket in after 4 races had been run. So they were great handicappers, including some long shot singles for the first 4 races. And then, had Val Pony not won and made them the only ticket, it probably never would have been scrutinized. But I remember when the structure of the ticket became public, I immediately thought to myself, something's not right. You can't be that good in 4 races and then go all. It was either a very lucky play or just something didn't smell right. And it came out that they were betting, post first race of the sequence. So changes were made. I think that is the last time any changes were made to the tote system. Our tote system is outdated, ancient by today's standard. Just the technology is not there, and it's in one regard very low-hanging fruit, because it's something that we could easily fix with the technology that's available today. But the problem is that nobody wants to invest any money in the tote system because you don't see an immediate return on that money, because unfortunately for us, the industry and the gamblers have lived up, and horse players have lived up to the reputation of, doesn't matter, they'll bet on it anyway, and that's a sad reality of the situation. So what happened over the past, what was that, a week or so ago, with those ridiculous amounts of money being dumped into those pools, whether or not it was CAW players or the story broke, I guess they think they know what happened. I'm not sure that they know exactly what happened and why. I don't really understand the end game of what was done. But I think it again exposes a tote system that's in dire need of of an update.
Yeah, it sounds like what happened was the on the FanDuel Racing app, it was only deducting the base value of your bet. So if you bet a 10-cent super, because I know some of the superfecta pools were heavily inflated, or a pick five or whatever the pool was, if you bet a pick five for 50 cents, it was only deducting your 50-cent base wager, even though people were probably going, all, once they realized that there was a glitch. And you're right. I mean, it shows some serious vulnerabilities with the Tote system. And I know this has been talked about for years, that it needs updating. It's severely outdated. We have people sitting there manually pressing a button when the gate opens to close wagering on a specific race. Anytime you see an issue with the Tote system, or people being able to pass posting on races, the excuse is always, oh, it was a operator error or user error, a manual error. It's 2023. How can we still have manual controls that are so heavily relied upon when we're dealing with millions, tens of millions of dollars? Something kind of similar happened in the Breeders' Cup a few years ago with modern games. A little bit of a slightly different issue, but still, once the decision was made and once a button was pushed with the Tote system, there's no going back from that.
Right.
And tons of people got screwed out of tons and tons of money. And
Correct.
you'd think that on one of the biggest stages in racing, you have an issue like that, that would be the wake-up call. We still haven't heard what the results of that investigation were. And, we sure as hell probably aren't ever going to figure it out.
I agree.
And you'd think that would be the wake-up call, but it wasn't. And we've had time and time again issues with people being able to bet after the bell, make, ridiculous wagers like this to inflate the pools. And, I'm sure these people at these harness tracks are sitting there saying, oh my God, we got $1 million in the superfecta pool tonight. What's going on? Who cares? We're making money.
Right. And it's a big problem. And, there are two areas, and, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. Okay. But I'm realistic about a lot of things. And there are two things about this industry that I can't trust. Okay. One is our Tote system, and the other is reporting of handle. Okay. If Tesla can make then the Tote system can figure it out. I agree. Uh, there are some issues with the Teslas as well, but that's for another show. But I have a hard time trusting what, quote, lack of a better term, they tell me about handle and about the Tote system. And I'll tell you why. Um, I've never been able to get a definitive answer from anybody who would know, that would be willing to go on the record and say, this is how the handle numbers that we report are independently audited or verified. Okay. Maybe they are, and then maybe they're accurate, but maybe they're not. And I don't know the answer to that question, and I have made inquiries along those lines, because it always troubles me when you see, we broke our all sources record handle every big day. Okay, you see that announcement just about. Yet we watch handle decline from year to year. Everyone I know that wages a decent amount of money, and is what I would call a serious player, is betting less money on the horses than ever before, with one exception, and that's the CAW players. Okay, they're betting more and driving, the handle to what it is, and letting it, I don't know, I guess hold its own, even though it's declining. But you know, take them out of the equation, and you've got an industry in trouble. And everybody wants to get rid of them, and I see why. And I don't say that I disagree with that. But what we have to face is that if we do get rid of them, and tomorrow there's no CAWs, and those guys all go, 12, 13, 14 CAW teams out there, or guys out there, if they all disappear and go somewhere else, what happens to horse racing the next morning? You know what I mean? You got tracks and venues struggling to survive now, and some not making it. So, I think it's a tough situation, but the Tote system, I don't trust. Okay. It's kind of like online poker. Okay. I've been playing poker my entire life. I'll sit down at a poker table with any player in the world, anybody, doesn't matter to me, but I won't play for a nickel online. I don't trust it. I just don't trust it. I can't see what's happening behind the scenes. I don't know who's running that casino. I agree. They're obviously not trying to fix it. And we said that at the beginning of the show. Nobody wants to invest money into the Tote system because there's no immediate return. It's not like, hey, if we invest so many millions of dollars into the Tote system and really make it up to date, handle's going to increase. No, it's money spent. I don't disagree with that, Charles. It's an issue. It's low hanging fruit that we don't even fix or address, and is probably not even on the radar because there's just no visible fast return on that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's hopefully that what we've seen here in the last couple of weeks is a bit of a wake up call.
I wouldn't hold my breath. I hope so.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't either. Everybody the next day is backfiring in all the pools anyway. Obviously not to that degree, but they're playing again. I'm playing again. You're playing again. And to the tracks, it's I don't know if that's a big enough signal for them to want to invest the time and effort to bring the technology into the 21st century, because it's lacking, as we all know.
When you think about it, a lot of times people complain about the late odds dropping and how that's a negative on the industry, and that's definitely gotten the attention of some of the major racing executives, because people complain about it all the time. And it does occur, and a lot of the times it's because of CAW money coming in late. A lot of times it's just because hubs send in their money late. If you're betting through a certain hub, when they make their dump, it affects the pool. And a lot of times it does make some sense. You see a horse that's 4-1 that really should be 2-1, and he flashes down. It's predictable. Sometimes it's not predictable, and I'm sure in my mind that it wouldn't alleviate the CAWs having access to make large wages the last couple of seconds. Okay. But I think that there is technology out there that could be pretty much real-time odds. In other words, no matter what hub I'm using or what ADW I'm using, whatever platform I'm wagering on, if I make a $5,000 bet on Breeders' Cup Day, it's not going to affect the pool. But if I make a $5,000 bet at Churchill Downs tomorrow, it's going to affect the pool. I think that there's a way, and there's technology available now to make any win bet or any exacta bet or anything like that reflect in real-time odds. In other words, I don't think they have to wait for the dump of money to come in, so to speak, to reflect that wager. I think as soon as I hit confirmed bet, boom, 5,000, those odds should drop almost instantaneously with me, in real time, so to speak. And I'm sure that technology exists, but we don't have it. We don't use it. We don't go after it.
Yeah, I mean, the technology exists, right? I mean, these CAW teams are tapped into the Tote system, so
Right.
whatever technology they want to use is available. It just seems like there's a, at least right now, maybe a blind spot or just a complete unwillingness to want to fix it. Let's take a quick timeout, and we'll be back in 30 seconds to talk about the 60 Minutes piece from last weekend. All right, we are back after a brief timeout. 60 Minutes. They aired a piece two Sundays ago, I believe. Now at this point, really highlighting, or re-highlighting, if you will, Jason Service, Jorge Navarro, and the federal indictments and the doping of horses and that whole saga. I'll let you have the first word, John. What was your sort of initial reaction to that piece, and kind of where do you stand on things now that you've had a week or 10 days or so to digest it all?
Well, I think for sure it could have been a lot better. Okay. I think it was very uh, agenda driven, in my opinion. It seemed to portray an agenda of negativity and making racing look bad, with no flip side to the coin, no progress, no uh, unbiased and fair reporting. First off, I think it could have been done without showing the breakdowns that they showed. Okay, we know those happen. We've all seen them. I don't think they needed to be shown to people that are not familiar with our sport. I don't think I don't think it helped the sport at all. I also think that there was a little bit too much sensationalism for my view. Like, Bob Baffert is one of the major faces of racing as far as being recognizable, and they put him up there and talk about Medina Spirit's, overage of a legal therapeutic medication. Okay, banned on race day, but and then they go to the Service and Navarro story and kind of lump that together when they're using stuff called monkey and this and that, and who knows what they were really using and what the heck was in it. But it certainly wasn't betamethasone and not in the same league or category as that. So they kind of lost me with that move as far as being unbiased, and not having some kind of agenda. So I thought it could have been done in a much more professional and a better way to show the problems in the industry, which exist, and I don't think anybody denies that. But I think it could have been shown more objectively, and with more of a broader view on some of the positives, that go on in the sport. I'll be the first to say, and I agree with that, Stephen. It certainly looked like there was an agenda to me, and it was one sided. And I don't disagree with everything that was said. There's a lot of truth to what was said, and these things need to be talked about. But there are things going on within the industry and progress being made in the industry, and everyone in the industry is not a villain. And it just seemed like it didn't portray it as a sport accurately the way I saw it. What did you think, Jim?
I have a little bit of a differing opinion, which
Good.
I guess for the purposes of this is pretty good. I agree. It didn't portray the industry in a good light, really whatsoever. Uh, but at the same time, nothing in there was untrue. Yes, the for the people who follow the industry and watch the industry closely, we knew about this stuff, years ago. It's by all accounts, it was old news to everybody that follows the industry. So I understand that side of it and that sort of complaint, if you will. But nothing in there was factually incorrect. So I think what we need to do as kind of horse players and the industry as a whole is kind of look to the future. What's the next move? Lisa Lazarus had an interview in there. Admittedly, it was a little underwhelmed with her comment. It was more like, well, we're here now and we're going to try and fix it. It didn't inspire a ton of confidence that, we're here now and the problem is getting resolved. It was like, well, we'll see what we can do. So that was a little unsettling for me. In addition to that, I think this just screams to the industry that we need a communications campaign, a marketing campaign, a PR wing of this industry that can kind of unite all the tracks as a singular voice and be included in a piece like this. Yes, the piece was overly negative about the industry. There was no sort of rebuttal or a comment as to what progress has been made and is going to be made in the future, which was disappointing to me. But at the same time, there is no one like that. I mean, good luck getting Naira, the Stronach Group, and the CDI, Keeneland, all on the same page to say, okay, what's our statement here in response to this? It's never going to happen. So that is a major hurdle, in my opinion, for the industry moving forward. There's just no talk about what's the next step. We know all of the news that they retold us. Yes, it doesn't look good. Horses are breaking down. Saratoga was an absolute disaster, right? I think we can all agree about that this past summer.
Absolutely.
But what's the next step? And I think that's the big issue for racing right now coming out of this 60 Minutes piece. Overall, I had no issue with it. Nothing was inaccurate. But what's the next step? What's the industry going to do from here? Are they just going to brush it under the rug and say, well, we already knew about this and it's old news, which, a lot of the conversation on Twitter was that. But what's the next move from the industry? How are we going to improve, get better, make things safer for the horses, make things safer for the bettors, going back to the tote system issues that we were just talking about? What's the next step? And, unfortunately, we haven't seen or heard anything about that. What's coming up on the horizon, which is a little bit unsettling, coming on the heels of a national piece like that. But I was fine with it. To me, it's how do we look forward? What's the next move so that we can a year from now, 2 years from now, go back to 60 Minutes and say, hey, you ran this story on the industry back in 2023. Here's everything that we've done. Here's the steps that we've taken since then. And here's what the industry looks like now.
Yeah. And although I felt differently about the show than you and didn't like it, I will say that, it's not really 60 Minutes job to come up with that what's next and report that's what next, if there is no what next coming from the industry. And I'm afraid that the only what next that comes from the industry. Thank you, Darryl. Appreciate that. I think the only what next that comes from the industry, which a lot of people don't want to hear, but I think it's the reality of the situation, is HISA and HIWU, and what they can actually do if and when they actually get their um, learning curve behind them, and kind of say, hey, listen, these are the rules. This is what we're going to do. This is how, we're going to do it. The learning curve is behind us. And it is what it is. And here we go. And when we're going to see that, I don't know. I will share. I am in the process of trying to get. I did have Lisa Lazarus on the show, as you know, a while back. I have been in contact with HISA and HIWU about possibly getting some higher ups on the show to discuss these very issues, and what is the what next, and what is coming down the pike to kind of correct these issues, and address these issues, and what answers they're going to have. And if that happens, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. But what their answers are, I'm as anxious to hear as anybody else.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you there. We'll pause here for another quick timeout, and on the other side of this break, John will share with us his super early Derby pick.
I'm glad you said super early, because it's super early. But
Yeah.
go ahead.
All right. It's never really too early to talk about the Kentucky Derby, I don't think, right? I think, anytime we get to the Sunday after the Derby, somebody's already talking about it for the next year. So,
Yes.
what have you seen so far that's kind of piqued your interest along the Derby trail as it starts to heat up here?
Well, I will say this. Everybody jumped on, and he'll probably win the 2-year-old champion, and he's already the book favorite, Fierceness, for the Kentucky Derby, off his dominant win in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile that we were fortunate enough to be there to see. But how many horses have won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and won the Kentucky Derby? 2? I don't even know. If that, I mean, Street Sense comes to mind. Maybe
Nyquist was another one, wasn't he?
Maybe I don't know. Not very many. Okay, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile is not exactly what I would call a stepping stone to getting the roses on the first Saturday in May. That said, I'm not a hype guy. I'm not a bandwagon guy. I very rarely use the word freak. Or these words that people throw around, off an impressive race. But there was a horse that caught my eye that I watched work out before he ran. I was relatively certain he would win first time out, and he didn't. But he did win second time out very impressively. Beat a horse in a maiden race that had some stake experience, although that horse did have a troubled trip. I don't think it would have affected the outcome at all. Right connections, right barn. And then I was fortunate enough to have Florent Giroux, who's ridden some nice horses, on the show the other day. And we talked about this horse, Nash, that he's riding. Now, he didn't ride him first time out, but those of you that missed that one-on-one interview, if you go back and find it on the one-on-one playlist, our interview, which I like to call the Rogues Gallery, we talk a little bit about Nash. Flo's ridden Gunrunner, Echo Zulu, a lot of nice horses. His eyes lit up, and he liked them a lot and spoke a lot about his acceleration, his maturity level, his improvement from his first start when he drew the rail and Flo had to go out of town to ride Timberlake. in the race at Aqueduct, and I think Pratt rode Nash from the rail. And he talks a little bit about what he told Pratt and what he thinks about him. And when I saw him win, all right, I knew when I saw him work that he can run, and then he didn't win that first race. Not an enormous excuse, just broke from the rail, didn't win. But when he ran in the second race and he won, I said, that's the horse I saw in the morning, and that's why they bet him so hard first time out. And this horse can run and is going to develop, barring any injury or anything unforeseen. I think Nash is a really, really nice horse. And anybody that tells you they know who's going to win the Kentucky Derby now, the week of Thanksgiving, I would like to be their bookie. But I will say this. If you told me I had to take Nash, who just broke his maiden, or Fierceness, who just won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile in, quote, dominant fashion, I would take Nash. I also think it's a tremendous help to him and his connections that it looks as if, Bob Baffert and all his 2-year-olds, which he's always got a barn full of ones that you've already seen, and then he's got a whole nother bunch of them that you haven't seen yet. He's probably not going to be in the Derby, so you don't have to worry about his horses. I think Nash, if I had to pick an early Derby horse right now, Nash is at the top of my radar as far as 2-year-olds I've seen that have impressed me thus far.
Yeah. One question in the chat from Daryl is asking Nash's pedigree, and just a quick look here. It looks like it's a Medaglia d'Oro. So
yeah, and he's out of a Grade 1 winning mare. I forget who it is. Maybe Sarah Louise. I don't know. I don't have it. I'm going off. Is it Sarah Louise? Yeah,
exactly right.
Just going off memory. I don't have it in front of me, but she's, I believe, a Grade 1 winner. And it's funny, a lot of times these, Grade 1 winners and these, top mares don't produce necessarily, great race horses. We spoke to Richard Mandela at the Breeders' Cup about Beholder and that very issue with Tamara, who went off favored and lost the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies. But Nash looks like the goods to me. And one of the things that, Flo and I spoke about, a horse goes wire to wire going long, once or twice. This horse only did it once. And, people assume that they need the lead in order to win, or that they're necessarily a speed horse. And sometimes it's too early to tell. And one of the things I like to do with my eye test and really evaluate if I think a horse can sit is when a horse is on the lead by themselves and you watch them, okay? No matter how fast they're going, are they relaxed? Are they within themselves? Are their ears pinned back and then pulling on the rider? Or are they kind of shut down and just waiting for that cue to change leads? And Nash looked to me like he was doing just what Flo wanted him to do until they were in the stretch and Flo said, go, let me see a little bit of what you got. And, he put the throttle down and the acceleration was there. And that kind of shows me, you never know until they do it, that this is a horse that can probably sit second or third and then go after a horse or two in front of him as well. Is he probably ever going to be a deep closer? Probably not. But I could certainly see him learning how to stalk and sit off the pace.
Yeah. I don't have much to add beyond that. I will just add, two quick things. One of the races coming up here in the next few weeks that's always interesting to me is the Remsen at Aqueduct, ahead of the Cigar Mile there on the undercard there for Cigar Mile Day. And, I was looking at this race the other day and just going through some of the names that have been in it and won it. It does often produce at least Kentucky Derby starters. You've got Mo Donegal, who, as we know, ended up winning Belmont. Brooklyn Strong was a Derby starter. You got Catholic Boy, who's, a Grade 1 winner on turf and dirt. So, Honor Code, tons of good names use that race. They don't always win the Kentucky Derby. Obviously, I don't think we've seen a a New York based Kentucky Derby winner in a little bit, but it is worth keeping an eye on the starters in that race, especially who wins it, and just kind of see how they progress in the early parts of next year.
Well, it's an ideal race, a mile and an eighth, for the 2-year-olds late in the year, that gives them, a nice foundation to build on as they go into their 3-year-old year.
Yeah. Yeah. And, just to toot my own horn here, I put in a future bet on Mage to win the Kentucky Derby back in February. And I spoke about it on Past the Wire for 3 or 4 weeks in a row on the Kentucky Derby Radar show. So once those shows get rolling here in the next couple of weeks, you should tune in, because I will have some Derby futures that I'd like to discuss, and hopefully we can get lucky again with a horse like Mage that I think I got him at 32 or 35 to 1, something along those lines.
If you could pair up advanced Derby wager winners, that would be quite an accomplishment. I would.
Yeah.
We'll see. That. So
we'll see. Yeah. So, there's your little announcement that the Derby Radar shows are returning to Past the Wire in the next couple of weeks. So that'll be exciting. Let's take one more quick break here. We'll come back. We'll talk about the Clark Stakes over at Churchill Downs on Saturday.
Hi everybody, Dan Oman here with some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free, exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING, get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator, exclusively on DRF Bets.
All right. Here we go. Didn't this, it might be showing a little bit of a lack of knowledge, but didn't this used to be a handicap? Wasn't it used to the Clark handicap?
It was, but it's not anymore. Handicaps are kind of going by the wayside. It also used to be a grade 1, I believe. It's now a grade 2. So, yeah. Yes, and yes.
Yeah. All right. What jumped off the page for you here, if anything?
Well, it's funny because the horse I wound up liking is No Surprise, and it was a surprise to me because it was a horse I was dead set against last year when he was getting a lot of hype and people were talking about him winning one of the classic races, and he didn't make any of them. But I was impressed with the way he came back. I was impressed with the race he ran. I think you've got a bunch of underachievers in here. There's only 2 or 3 horses I think can win the race. But I wound up landing and settling on First Mission, who's going to be the favorite. And I just think has the most upside and catches a field of older horses late in the year that have really not been all that, and I think he's going to get the job done and validate some of those, some of that hype that he was getting, earlier in the year. And it's funny because I was against him. I don't know, what did he scratch out of, the Preakness or something? I think he was supposed to run into Preakness, and I was dead set against him, and I was like, oh man, I can't believe he scratched. I was ready to bet against him with both hands, but that was then and this is now. And I always say, one of the best things you can do as a handicapper is not go in with any bias or preconceived ideas and just take it as it comes, And when I handicap this race and look at this race and go over it, I land on first mission every time.
Yeah, no
Now there are one or
argument.
two I think I can beat him, but I don't think it's very likely. And I'll talk
Which
about
ones are those?
Well, if you scroll back to the number 4, Gasoline, Todd's horse, he looks like a horse that's just kind of slowly but surely getting a little better and a little better and a little better. And, his last 2 races were good. He gets Flavien Prat. He obviously likes Churchill Downs. Um, you know, 11 starts, no stakes. That's a little rare for a good Pletcher horse. He'll usually put him in a stake somewhat before that. But he's kind of taking his time with this one. And, he is a second stringer and maybe even a third stringer who's kind of scratched and clawed his way up the ladder and now gets a shot at some decent horses. So, I was a little torn between him and Cox's horse, but I settled on Cox's horse because I just think he's got a little bit more raw talent and more upside. But this was the other one that I thought had a legitimate shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he really has a decent career record, and anytime Todd's in a stakes race, I think you got to give him his respect.
Yeah, and him and Cox's horse both look like they'll get good trips, and a lot of the older horses to me kind of look like they're underachievers, for lack of a better term. I think this is a pretty soft edition of the Clark. So, I think those were the 2 up and comers in the field. That's kind of where I landed.
Yeah. The one horse that I have always kind of been drawn to, at least for the last couple of months, is this Il Miracolo. Now, of course, needing to go to Parks to get a graded stakes win is always a little bit of a concern. But I feel like the last couple of months, this horse has been a hell of a lot more competitive than he was earlier in the year. So to me, that suggests, a bit more seasoning, a bit more foundation, a bit more maturity. And this is kind of the type of race that I would look for a horse like that to find a way to win. I don't think he's incredibly overmatched in here. I feel like he's been running fairly consistently and could be sitting on a nice effort. First time at Churchill Downs.
And if you look, he's got some, nice lines to him. I mean, you see Forte twice, you see Arcangelo, you see Scotland, who was, pretty fast when he got out on the lead that day in the Curlin. He won the Smarty Jones at Parks. He caught slop in the Pennsylvania Derby, still ran good. Ran a good race to older horses in the Fayette and Keeneland.
That O'Connor horse was getting a lot of buzz earlier in the year.
No doubt about it. And when I said there were 2 others that I was looking at, he was the other one. So it was Gasoline and him were the other 2 that I was looking at. And when I said, to me, those are the only 3 that I think can really win the race. I lean to Strategic Mission, but the only 3 that I really think can win are the 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah. The only other one that kind of stuck out to me, I mean, Linda shipping into Churchill is kind of nuts. I don't know what that is. This Stage Raider, kind of laid an egg in the Breeders' Cup. What do you think about kind of wheeling back, somewhat quickly here off of a dud effort like that? You think this is a winning trainer move, or is this something completely different?
Well, his two, when it's very rare that you see a horse leave Chad's barn and get better, and he seems to have done that. You know what I mean? He left Chad's barn, and he seems to, have gotten better. Although he did show flashes, and when Chad had him, I mean, he broke his maiden by 10 in the slop, but he never really kind of developed and put it together. He seemed to get a little bit more consistent and get a little bit better when Sherry DeVoe got him. I'm not sold on him, honestly. He's coming back pretty quick off a dull effort in the Breeders' Cup. He really didn't do much running at all. I'm gonna have to say, prove it to him. I'm just not quite a believer in Stage Raider. I mean, I think he's a half to justify. He's well bred. So he was always meant to be able to run, but he's just never really kind of put it all together, for my liking anyway.
Yeah. That move kind of stuck out to me, so I wanted to just get your thoughts on that. All right. Any other last thoughts on this race before we jump into a little bit of Q&A?
No, I think we got the winner in there somewhere.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know what kind of value it is going to be, but the Clark used to be a really good race. I hate seeing these races lose their status, so to speak, but there's just so many races now that they just can't keep their status, and this one comes right after the Classic. It's kind of like the Classic afterthought, I guess. So
yeah. All right. We'll pause for one more quick break, and then we'll come back and do a Q&A.
Okay.
One of the better Larry Colmus calls, in my opinion.
Vino Rosso.
All right, let's open it up to questions from the crowd. I think I saw close to 80 people on here at one point. We're at 72 right now. The comments have been fast and furious. So I'm going to go back and see if we've got some questions that I can throw up on here. And
listen, ask us anything means ask us anything. So, haters, lovers, watchers, readers, whatever you want to ask, now's the time you'll get an answer.
All right, let's open it up with Steven asking how you feel about the U.S. taking notes from the Hong Kong Jockey Club on their tote system. They seem to be very transparent. John, you probably know more about this topic than I do, so have at it.
All for it. Whatever we can get from the Hong Kong Jockey Club that they're willing to share with us and teach us and help us with, I'm 100% for it. I think they run a very great program, a tight ship. I think we need more of their mentality and their approach to racing for sure. So all for that, Stephen.
All right, scrolling down. That one was all the way up at the top.
Big Mike, how do you know Big Mike? I was hoping to listen to him how he changed up his betting strategy to improve his game. Big Mike, I only know from social media. He's one of the few people that I've developed a relationship with or a mutual respect for on social media. Uh, yeah, we're going to bring him back on the show and talk more. He was a great guy to have on the show. He's a great guy. He's a super sharp player. And those of you that know me and follow me know I don't throw, betting accolades out at a lot of people out there. I think a lot of people approach the game incorrectly and put themselves behind the eight ball. Big Mike's not one of those guys. He's really sharp. So we'll get him back on and we'll ask him that. I think he did talk a little bit about how he changed up his strategies on that show. And one of the things he said was, he got more focused and disciplined and realized that you can't go after everything. You got to kind of take a stand and back it and make it count when you're right, which is something we've talked about on a lot of our shows as well. There's a little saying I throw out there that, it rings to some people and it doesn't to others, but you have to be, in my opinion, willing to cash less tickets to win more money. And that sounds a little funny, but you can't use everybody. You can't dance with all the girls in the club and expect to, to win. You just can't. You've got to take a stance and back your opinion. And I think Mike understands that, and that was a key to him changing his game and becoming a successful player.
Yeah, John, you and I met through social media and have built a mutual respect too. So I'm one of the few. So I'm happy about that.
You are absolutely one of the few. There's a few. It's a short list, but there's a few. And I mean, Jim, you were out there with we were there together at the Breeders' Cup. There were a lot of people who came over to us and recognized us and knew the show and knew Past the Wire. And I appreciate all of you, everybody that bothers to like, subscribe, comment, interact on our shows. That's why we do it. We do it for all of you guys. So we really, we and gals, we really appreciate that. It means everything. And I was surprised at how many people knew who we were and came up to us at the Breeders' Cup. It was humbling. It was really humbling, to tell you the truth.
That was pretty cool to see. Just Daryl, real quick on the Big Mike interview. He did talk a little bit about how he shifted a lot of his play, if not all of his play, into the pick five pools rather than messing around with some other things. So definitely some nuggets that he shared in there that can kind of explain a bit more about his approach now. But yeah, I think a follow-up interview to kind of map all of that stuff out and his wagering philosophies would be cool. We've got another question here from Steven wondering about the 2-year-olds. How much stock do you put in the actual foal date? There has to be a difference between a horse actually born in January versus a horse born in May. I have my thoughts on this, but John, I'd be curious to hear if you and I are thinking in the right direction. So you go first.
I think it's a great question, and the younger a horse is, and the earlier in his or her career that you look at that, or that they start racing, the better. Obviously, a horse that's older by a couple of months is a little bit more developed, a little bit more mature, and in the right barn, that can be a world of difference. So that is absolutely something I look at, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't look at. So I think it's one of those few areas left where you can get an edge. And it's hard to get an edge now because there's just so much information out there. And that's something that it would be difficult for CAWs, and we probably shouldn't even talk about it because now that they'll hear it, they'll figure out a way to do it. But a lot of the CAW players probably don't have that programmed into their algorithms and things that they look for with these 2-year-olds, because they have a bigger edge in races where there's more information available for them to dissect. And, in those 2-year-old races, they're always looking for edges and more information. And that's something they're probably not looking at, which is good for us. But yes, I think it's a great question. I think it definitely plays, into my handicapping and my decision making. And I like a horse, early in their career that's, foaled, earlier. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the first thing I look for, but when you're getting into, the early on, or I should say, kind of later at the end of their 2-year-old year, which we're in now. If I'm looking to kind of split hairs between two horses to narrow down a ticket or something, that is one angle that I will factor in, after all of the more popular things. Anyone know what became of Rich Strike? Yeah, they
retired, right?
No,
they just retired him.
Oh, they did. They pulled him out of that sale and said he was going to be back in like light training.
Oh, then you know more than I. The last thing I'm the worst at following racing news that like doesn't come my way. And you'd think I would be good at that. So like, people are like, oh, don't you know? I'm like, no, I'm like the last to know. I thought he was retired. I guess he's not.
They were gonna sell him at Keeneland last week or this week, and at the last minute they pulled him out of that sale and said they were just gonna put him on the farm for some light exercise and make a decision soon. I mean, I don't know. It was very, very goofy, the whole thing. I mean, him getting in the Derby and winning the Derby and just everything that's kind of happened, since him winning the Jeff Ruby Stakes has just been like totally bizarre. So
absolutely. And I do know there was some internal squabbling amongst the connections there. So, how much that affected what happened and what happens with him going forward. Don't know. Thank you, Steven. Appreciate you, man.
All right. This one's up your alley since you watch far more European racing than I do.
Love the question, Kim. I'm actually glad you asked it because I'll give my unpopular answer, of which I am extremely confident in, but we're never going to get a chance to find out. Ace Impact for me. Ace Impact's arc. He came home so fast. I loved him that day. That was as impressive a race as I can remember seeing. And I think Ace Impact, because he retired so quickly after that arc, we'll probably never know how good or great he was. And I've been watching races since I'm a little kid, seen a lot of great horses. Secretariat, I told Ron Turcott when I had him on a one-on-one, I always thought he was a better grass horse. And he said, you're right. Secretariat was a better grass horse. A lot of people don't even know he was a grass horse. Ace Impact, to me, one of the best I've ever seen. I just wish we could have seen him again. I wish he would have came for the Breeders' Cup. I wish he would have stuck around another year. And as brilliant as Equinox is, I think Ace Impact is all that and more.
All right. Favorite and least favorite race callers. I would say I don't necessarily have any least favorite because it's probably one of the toughest jobs in sports, to be honest. And I know I couldn't do it. So anybody that's out there behind the mic using the binoculars, more power to you. I think for me, I like listening to, Frank Miramati. Pete Aiello is good. Larry Colmus is good on the big racing days. Chris Griffin's really good at Aqueduct. Anytime I'm listening to a horse race, I couldn't care less who's calling it. They all sound pretty good to me.
Well, what I'm going to do is go back, okay? But before I do that, we do have a video on the channel of me in the booth with Pete Aiello, who is a great race caller. calling a race. I think it was Florida Derby Day. And we're in the booth. We videotape him, the whole thing. He let us do the whole thing, and you can go on there and see it and what goes into it. And he talks a little bit about what goes into it. And it's a really tough job. I tried it on my own, just sitting watching a race, and I can't call a race to save my life. But I love Frank Miramati, great guy. So many great race callers, but there are two that stick out to me. And it isn't as much for their calls as it is for their voice. Okay. They've got the racetrack voice. One was the voice of New York racing for many years. A lot of you will not remember him, but Fred Capicella was an unbelievable race caller. He, had his trademark things. I can't imitate his voice, but he would say, the horses are at the gate, which can mean only one thing. It is now post time. And then he would just give his calls. The other guy who has an unbelievable racetrack voice was a California race caller named Harry Hansen, who they've got a steak race named off. And he was the guy that he would start off his calls, and there they go. And it was just a classic racetrack voice that would just echo through the clubhouse or grandstand. And those would be the two historic guys that I would say. But I haven't heard a bad one in a long time. That's a tough job. They love to knock and throw shade at this girl from Parks, Jessica Paquette. Anybody that knocks her and throws shade at her, I say, get out there and try and call a race yourself. Right. It ain't easy. Right. Poor girl's come a long way. She gets abused all the time. She let out a curse the other day accidentally. It was funny. You would think she ran over somebody's kitten, for crying out loud, the way that they just tortured her. Girl's trying really hard. Give her some slack. She's not nearly as bad as most of the people criticizing her would be. Try to make a tape and send it in, see if they call you. So it's a tough job calling a race. It really is. There's so many good ones, but for me, those two, Capicella and Harry Hansen, with no disrespect to Pete and Frank and my other friends out there that call races, they're great. And Frank Miramati, as many of you may or may not know, can call a race in anybody's voice, including yours, mine, Jim's, Darrell's, or anybody else.
All right, what do you think racing will look like in 10 years from now? I think we're looking at significantly less tracks. A bunch of these places are gonna close, I think, unfortunately. And fingers crossed, the Tote technology is alive and well at the 5 to 10 tracks running around the country in 10 years from now.
Jim, you're the video guy, so I'm going to answer this by asking you, just go to the final scene of The Sopranos. Just black screen.
The lights are out.
My answer. No, I think unfortunately we're going to see a severe and significant decline. Severe and significant, probably shouldn't use those two together like that, but I think we're going to see a significant decline in the number of tracks operating, the number of horses competing, the number of stables. I think racing is moving towards a much more consolidated, elitist type of atmosphere of less racing, less tracks, less meets, and only the strong survive. And I think we're heading in that direction. And that's if we can survive and right a lot of the wrongs. If we can't fix a lot of the stuff that's going on right now in the next 2, 3, 4 years, then I stand by my first answer and go to the Sopranos screen, black.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest changes we're going to see, and I know the horsemen's associations around the country are not on board with it right now, but I think fixed odds is going to make a big push here in the U.S. in the next couple of years. The sports books have a lot of money. They have a lot of political sway. And I think horse racing will eventually come around and realize that they need fixed odds as a supplement to the parimutuel pools. I don't think that fixed odds is going to be the end all be all, but I think at least in the short term, it will provide a little bit of a lifeline, and just a lot of the industry folks at the racetracks and from sports books executives that I've spoken to over the last couple of months. It sounds like there's some momentum building for fixed odds, and I would expect to see that start to grow in popularity here in the next 3 to 5 years.
I hope so. I like fixed odds. I just hope they don't cap it
Right.
the way they have been known to.
Yeah.
And the clock, how about the arrogant gelding on the rail, pairing ones on Thoroughgraph in his last 2 races? First mission is coming off a 6.5 TG, had route top 3.5 in Lexington, then out 5 months. All noted, but Brad Cox seems to be one of those trainers that really defies the typical Thoroughgraph patterns and what we see a lot on what I see a lot on Thoroughgraph. I thought the horse on the rail was a little bit overmatched. Like the pattern, can't knock the pattern. Paired ones is Walter, is a pattern that I love and talk about a lot. But I got a feeling that earlier in the year I underestimated First Mission, and I think the time off allowed him to blossom, and he's better than I thought he was back then. So I'll stand by that.
Yeah. Just a quick note on the fixed odds conversation. I feel like when we talk about this, everybody just defaults to fixed odds on win bets. Fixed odds opens up an entire betting menu that we don't even know about. You'd be able to bet over under wins for jockeys or trainers on a single day or over the course of a Saratoga meet. You'd be able to get future bets down on the Kentucky Derby, the Travers, all the Breeders' Cup races. So for people who follow the game regularly, I feel like it would be a huge, huge opportunity and give people that edge that has kind of evaporated over the last couple of years because of a lot of these computer teams. So fixed odds isn't just win bets.
It's prop bets too, is what
prop
basically
bets
what you're
too.
saying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I was hoping took off, and we'll come. Give me 1 second, Michael. We'll come back here. One of the things I was hoping took off, and I wrote a column about it years ago, and I actually thought of moving out of the country because I like it that much, and I think that for me, there is an abundance of money to be made on exchange wagering. I would love to be able to say, okay, I'm going to use Arcangelo as an example. He didn't run, but I didn't think, had he run, that he had any chance whatsoever to win the Breeders' Cup Classic. None. Zero. I believed it in my heart, and I would have been willing to bet. So now, let's say he would have been 5-2, okay, in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I would have offered 3 or 4 to 1 on a betting exchange and took everything that my bankroll and wallet and name let me take. And if I could get $5 million worth of action, I would have took it and rode it that hard, because that's how strong I felt about it. So with exchange wagering, you can actually bet a horse not to win. Another big example when they were talking about this was California Chrome in the Belmont Stakes. I loved Tonal List. I didn't think California Chrome could win the Belmont. I would have given any price you wanted on exchange wagering and took whatever you wanted to bet. I'd have taken it and given you 5 to 1, 10 to 1, whatever it took to get as much money from you as possible. So I love the concept of exchange wagering. It never became legal. I get it. In the United States anyway. It becomes a a little bit of a gray area as far as policing it with horsemen, maybe taking advantage of that exchange and, not trying with a horse or something like that. So I get all of that, but the concept itself, on a level playing field, love it. Michael, what was that question you had? I know you said in the past the game's tougher than ever, but what advice would you give someone who wants to try and play semi-professionally when they retire to supplement their income? Okay. One, go in knowing that you're not semi-retired anymore. You can't beat this game semi-professionally. When I played professionally, I can tell you this. I made tremendous sacrifices in my personal life and in my daily life in order to be prepared. And it took every ounce of that. You can't miss a day. You can't miss a trick. You've got to study every day. You've got to do homework every day. There's no more weekends. It's just like working on the backside, being a trainer. There's no days off. There's no time off. That time off, okay, that weekend you miss could be the weekend that you could hit for 200, 300,000, and you need those hits in order to beat the game. So, any time away is a missed opportunity. So it takes a tremendous amount of dedication. So the first thing I would tell you is if you want to do it, go into it knowing it's going to be very hard and require as much work and dedication as you going out there and opening up a restaurant or opening up a business, where you got to watch everybody and everything and just, be on your game 24/7, because that's what it takes. Whether it was when I did it or today. And if you're not willing to make that commitment, you're not going to beat the game.
All right, we'll do one more here, and apologies to the handful of others that we won't get to. We're running a little bit long, and my wife just got home with the kids, so I'll be summoned here in the next few minutes. Last one we'll get to from Rodney. What 3-year-olds are you intrigued to see running at 4-year-olds? And I'll punt this one to you, John, because off the top of my head, it seemed like everybody retired.
I'll tell you who I'm excited to see, and we saw him run on Breeders' Cup Friday. Hijazi. That horse won.
He looked pretty good.
That horse won the last race on Breeders' Cup Friday, like he could have run and won the Breeders' Cup Sprint on Saturday, in my opinion. He looked that impressive to me watching that race live with Jim at the Breeders' Cup. I even commented after the race, Jim, that horse was like, he should be in the sprint tomorrow. I mean, didn't I? I'd have bet him in the sprint. If they would have ran him back on 24 hours rest, I might have bet him in the sprint the next day. I mean, he just looked. So I'm very, very excited to see what he could do. Other than him, who's left? Aren't they most of them retired?
Oh, it sounds like Mage is coming back.
Right. I'm glad Mage is sticking around. Hopefully he bounces back. But if I had to say one horse, it would be, Hijazi off that race on Breeders' Cup Friday. Those of you who didn't get your questions answered, I'm not going to leave you without us doing it. Jim, if you can save the chat, if we can download it, I can go into it afterwards, I think, or whatever.
Here,
I'll get everybody answered somehow.
Let's here. Let me fish these out. You can talk about this one while I see how many we got left.
Okay. I've been watching a ton of Kentucky bred workouts, and the purpose I've seen some horses pulling their head to one side or the other instead of straight. What does this say? I would have to see it to answer that as intelligently as I would like. Could mean a lot of things. If they're being distracted, could be one thing, could be indicative of a problem. Would really have to see that. Pulling their head to one side or the other, could be a jockey, if it's a workout, pulling the horse one way or the other to teach him something or try and slow him down. Could be a number of things, Stephen. If you send me a video or a clip or tell me a specific one to watch, I could probably answer that a lot better.
All right, some of your best Kentucky Derby picks over the years. I guess mine would probably have to be Mage. I picked him to win in February. I don't know, it doesn't get much better than that.
I've had my share of them. Sunday Silence was a big hit for me. Barbaro was a big hit for me. Quiet. Hey, Jerry. He can't hear me. He's deaf. I apologize. My dogs do listen, but Jerry unfortunately can't hear me telling him to shut up. So who's the idiot, him or me? And I could better answer that question if I bring up the results of the Derby real quick. Because you tend to forget.
I will say I was at the Derby twice. Once in the first time in 2009 when Mind That Bird won, and then I was there a few years ago when Rich Strike won. So next time I go, I'll let everybody know that I'll be there, so you can bet the longest shot on the board, since I'm 2 for 2 in person with the longest shot in the race, winning it all.
Okay, I have not done that good in the Kentucky Derby the last couple of years. Okay, so we got to go back a ways for some of my really, really nice ones. But I had Orb really good. I had I'll Have Another really good. I had a major score on Animal Kingdom. Super Saver, no good. Mind That Bird, no good. Big Brown, no good. Street Sense, I had, but not good. Barbaro, big score. Giacomo, disaster. Had him, blew every exotic you could possibly blow. Sea Hero, nice one for me. Unbridled, very nice one for me. Sunday Silence, very nice one for me. Swale, another nice one for me. So, last couple of years have been rough, but I do say this. I was alive for $1 million with Sol Volante and $500,000 with that AP Arrow horse who ran second or third, off for about $1,100 investment. So didn't close the deal. Authentic wired me up, but we'll get one soon.
Any opinion on the Japan Cup this weekend?
Didn't get a chance to study it yet, so I can't say, but I will.
I'm going to put this one up at risk of tying our hands, John, but this seems like it would be fun to do.
Will you guys do a show on Louisiana Champions Day, December 9th? Probably not. Not because we don't want to. We could probably do a little something on it, but just time-wise, it comes up real quick and just a very bad time for me with everything else that I got going on and, commitments that we already have. But we'll try. I'll try to work it in there.
Is Angel of Empire running at 4? That's a good question. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah. That's a shame. I liked him. I thought he was one of the more impressive horses leading into the Derby.
Yeah,
it's a shame we didn't see more of him in the second half of the year. All right. I think that was it. I don't think I missed anybody. Hopefully I didn't.
If we did, shoot us a message, put it in the comments, and we'll get to it. I'll go through all the comments over the next day or so. And if there's any questions we missed, we'll get them. So if you enjoyed our first live show and you want to see more, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, let us know. If you don't ever want to see us live again, you can tell us that as well. We take everything under advisement. So that's it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all of you.
We'll see you next time.
Nobody does it better.